Welcome back to the Titanium Hangar. This is Mike, and today I want to talk to you about something that's been kind of on my mind for a while, and that is price versus value. This is a whole concept of why some people will spend $120 on a figure that has several options out there, but they want what they consider the best, while others won't even spend $25 on a figure that is sort of similar, but they feel like the $25 is too much. I'm going to break it down for you for what I see with this topic, and we're going to go over several different toy lines in this discussion coming up. So when you consider price versus value, it really comes down to three factors that people generally look at. They look at what franchise do they love the most? What franchise do they like? Maybe it's Transformers is your number one, but maybe something like Star Wars and Star Wars Black Series is like number 7 on your list. So how deep you are into that franchise and where you prioritize that's the first factor. The second factor about price versus value is just how obscure is the toy line that you are collecting. Is this something that you're going to see 5 different companies make? Or are you only going to see one company make it? So it comes down to obscurity, and if you really love, say, Ninja Turtles and you have 5 options, or Silverhawks and you only have 2 options, it comes down to you got to pick one of those 2. And lastly, it comes down to quality. Of course, you're not going to pay $100 for a figure that's really poor quality. You can get a higher quality one for $25. Well, depends. So let's get into talking about G.I. Joe. So G.I. Joe Classified started out based mostly off this video game they had at the time, and I gotta say that I was a little turned off by the overall look of them. Couple looked good to me, couple didn't, but they have recently course corrected. They have recently made more retro style figures and designs, and for that, I like that. Now, a lot of people liked the sort of Fortnite looks that they had before, and the good thing about that is those still sort of exist, and going forward, though, you probably won't get those designs as much. But I do kind of like how they balance sort of a real world with the cartoon. But a lot of people feel like the price hikes on these from $25, $35, $44, and now $80 for Serpentor and those kinds, and then the HasLabs for $300, a lot of people feel like the price is too high, and guess what? It's true, because most of these figures have gone on clearance. Most of these in this picture have been on clearance within the last few months. So, what is an alternative to G.I. Joe Classified? Well, there's Valaverse, but it's not the same thing. It really is not the same thing. It is its own thing. And I do want to say that I am really impressed with what Valaverse has done. Bobby Vala over there with his line of figures, and it is growing. His support level is growing. But I'm kind of curious about a few things when it comes to Valaverse. But I want to say that before I get into that, $31.99 I believe is the price point on these figures. I don't own any of them. I do have some of his weapons packs. But the more expensive that G.I. Joe Classified becomes, the better of a value these become. And then, of course, side-by-side quality. I hear Valaverse is better than Hasbro, but I don't know for sure. So I really can't guarantee anything. Every new wave seems to be more interesting, and he's actually pulling off stuff other companies can't. Other companies can't put out a whole wave of just female characters and sell really well, but he can. So it makes me start to wonder, could he take on other franchises? Could he get other licenses? And how well would he do with those? I'd like to see him tackle Bionic 6 or Visionaries or something along those lines. Be something a little bit different, but bring something that's never been remade before again. Would be exciting. Love to see that. So we have Super 7 doing G.I. Joe. These figures look like they've walked right out of the cartoon. I love them. I love them on my shelf. I have to say, they all have some minor QC issues. Minor. Very minor. And with that, that's really putting a lot of people off. For the $55 price point, people are saying these should be premium figures, shouldn't have any of these issues, which I don't think that so much G.I. Joe Classified or Valaverse has. Like, the heads don't pop on and off as well and smoothly and work as well as they should. Paint rubbing, because there's painted joints and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I mean, I don't really have a problem with them. I think they look fantastic, and I understand the minor issues. I tolerate them, but I still like them. Then we get into Mezco, who's doing $100 plus figures. Now, if you really want the best 1/12 scale, you get into Mezco and that kind of stuff. But I have to say that I really don't mess with these more expensive ones for something like G.I. Joe, because you have $25 options or $55 options or $31 options or $32 options. I don't really see the point of spending that much, but other people do, and for that, that's their value. They feel like they get their value for that price, even though I don't, and a lot of other people don't feel that way. There's enough people to support a company like this, making a very high-end with soft goods and all that kind of stuff option. Alright, so for G.I. Joe, Hasbro for the low end for $25, Valaverse a little bit higher price, $31, $32, and then you've got Super 7 at $55, and then you have Mezco at $100. Where are you at with that? I'm with the Super 7 and I'm with the Classified. And that's where I'm rolling. I'm actually doing both, but I'm doing more, leaning more towards the Super 7. Oh, and by the way, have you noticed a ton of reviews for the red shirt bazooka? Like, how different could it be, really, than the one we already have, other than a slight paint difference? Seriously. So next I want to talk about Silverhawks. Silverhawks is a franchise that has very low collector base. There are not very many people collecting Silverhawks for the most part. If you look at the vintage stuff, the prices are through the roof, but it's not like they're selling like hotcakes. Even the vintage stuff, as much as people are asking for them, sit unsold for a long amount of time unless they're really cheap. Unless they're much lower than the average sell price, then they sell. And that's just kind of how things go for the most part. But with this, we're really only getting two options, and Super 7's one of them. This is Wave 1. It's not out yet. We don't know when it'll come out. Let's look at Wave 2. I have reviewed every one of these figures, and I have to say, I love these figures. But, there's a caveat here. Got a couple of QC issues with them, but they're not so bad that I would say don't buy them. But, are you getting your $55 worth? I'm going to come out and say this right now. I really, truly believe these $55 figures from Super 7 are more like $30 figures. But the way they look and everything about them on the shelf and all that, I accept paying the higher value, the higher $55 price, and feeling that value. The reason I say these are more like $30 figures is because people will put them on eBay all day long for $55 and they won't sell. But if they put them up for $30, they sell. So really what the market's willing to pay, for the most part, is what a figure's worth. Robin Toys already come out with a Quicksilver and a Monstar. Now the difference here is it's more stylized, less like the cartoon. I won't even say more like the toy, but shinier than what Super 7 did. Now, I happen to believe that going forward, their figures are going to be even shinier yet when they start making the rest of these in the Titanium Titans. And I am very pleased with both of the options that I got. And this guy was $70. And if you get all of their stuff on early bird, you get it, I think, 30% off. Stuff goes up and people start complaining about the $100 price point. But you're not at the $100 price point if you just pre-order it at an early bird price. Getting into the Monstar, just absolutely phenomenal. And I don't have the Super 7 yet, but I'm going to tell you that this thing around the same price. I think this is $89, Super 7's $85. Comparable price point, but I almost can guarantee you I'm going to still like this one more than the Super 7s when the Super 7 arrives, and it's almost going to feel like I spent too much money on the Super 7 one, because I just like the way this looks. I appreciate the look more, and it is more stylized. The other one's going to be two-tuned to a detriment, but if you commit to making a line that's two-tuned, that's committed to the tune, then you have to stick with it, right? Wait, Super 7 has to stick? We'll talk about that when we get to Turtles. So looking at Silverhawks, not many people are really deep into this, so it's probably low on a lot of people's priority list. So first factor, not so deep into it, want to get the cheapest option they can for whatever, basically. But if you start looking into a couple of the other factors in here, you got to say obscurity is pretty darn obscure, right? So you're not going to see a lot of companies making this. There's not going to be a lot of competition. There's basically just Super 7 and there's Ramen Toy, and they're going for different looks. So to me, it's perfect. You get the best of both worlds, so collect both. But if you're just going to pick one, that's completely up to you and where you view your value. Then it comes down to quality, and Super 7 has had some quality issues, and I have to say that I don't think they're so bad that I would not recommend them. I want to talk about Star Wars Black Series for a bit, and I want to boldly state this. Every figure in this picture I love. I wished I would have just waited and bought them when they were on the retro card backs, but you don't know what's going to be on the retro card backs. But these are all great ones, so I'm trying to remember this line in a good respect. But almost all these went on sale or clearance, and nobody really cared about them, it seemed like, for the most part, because for whatever reason, there's all these media that it has to match the media when it comes to Hasbro, and I guess when it comes to some of the collectors, but for the most part, they're sort of bombing as a whole. The line as a whole is bombing. Like, nobody wants to pay $25 for these, and a lot of these figures in this picture showing up at Ollie's for $10 and other places on clearance for $13 or whatever. So with that, these do not have a perceived value of $25. They barely had a perceived value of $20. And yes, there are a few that'll go for like $100, like an Anakin or something on eBay, but which I don't understand that. That blows my mind. That absolutely blows my mind. And then Captain Rex and some of those, which I could sort of understand Captain Rex. But looking at that, here's the other caveat to this. You can get a lot of these on sale and clearance. You get a lot of these characters for $10, $15. And yet Mafex is making $100 figures, $120 figures, $112. I don't know however much. She's over $100. And so with that, Bo-Katan, she was on sale for $13 for the Hasbro one. So the price versus value on this, some people value this character and value having a Mandalorian set of high-end, better-looking figures and probably better articulation and more realistic in life-like figures. I think the Bo-Katan figure that came out was fine. But to me, Star Wars Black Series 6-inch is like number 50 on my list these days. So 71, it's like 70 out of 71 toy lines. I don't know. It's really low down there, and I wouldn't be wanting to spend $100 figure. But there's other people who are still super ultra excited about Star Wars Black Series and willing to do that. Well, not only Black Series, just 1/12 scale, willing to go Mafex. I'm also seeing SH Figuarts. Those are some great figures, great looking figures, but it seems like it's falling out of favor, and people don't want to spend $70 to $100 on those anymore. Really. So it all comes down to perceived value. Star Wars Black Series, you can get it for $25 or in some cases $9. And so with that, I'm just happy with Black Series. And if I come across it on sale, if I don't, I'll just live without it forever, I guess. The other thing is that going with these higher end ones, well, you know for a fact you're going to get it, but you're probably going to get better quality. And you look at, say, is this your franchise? So that's another one. How obscure is it? Not at all. So there's going to be so many options in the future, and Hasbro's going to remake everything, always. They always do. And then you got to say the chances of getting another Luke Skywalker are pretty high. And then you got to say, are these $100 options higher quality? Well, I don't know so much about SH Figuarts or Mafex, but I've heard good and bad things about both. I'll quickly switch to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's 4 companies making them. We've got, well, at least 3. We've got Playmates doing whatever they're doing at the low price of $20, which I don't think that's that low for what they're doing. Plus, they're doing the reissues of vintage stuff and all that kind of stuff. But then you start stepping up into NECA. I think NECA is the best for me because I want the toon look, not the toy look. So with that, NECA is really knocking it out of the park these days. I find it really hard to pass on any of these. So when I started collecting these, it was $52 for 2 figures, $26, so it was like $6 more than what you're paying for just regular, like G.I. Joe Classified or Star Wars Black Series or whatever was going on with Marvel Legends and all that kind of stuff, which I'm not really talking about Marvel Legends today. When it comes to this, I think that you're getting most bang for the buck. Nowadays, they're like $60 for a 2-pack for most of the 2-packs, but a lot of the 2-packs pack a lot of extra. And that's another thing about value, is you're packing in some extras that are worthwhile. Super 7 sort of does the same thing too. But when it comes to the 2 big players in the higher end brackets, factoring out Playmates and all that, and factoring out the loyal subjects ones. So that's a whole different ball game. Getting into this, Super 7's going for the toy look. Now, I never really was excited for the toy look, and I was definitely not at all excited about collecting two TMNT lines at all. In fact, I barely was into NECA, and when this stuff came out, and I was like, oh, I'm just straight NECA, and I'll leave this alone. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, I used to have to pick a side. I mean, you can't just spend, $20,000 a year on collecting Ninja Turtles, unless you can. And with that, I prefer the NECA, but I like some things about Super 7. And then this next line here, I was like, ooh, I might have to get me some Super 7. I like these. But you got to remember, these are $55 a pop versus around nowadays $30 a figure, $30 to $40 a figure for NECA. And so with that, I like the Casey Jones. Looks more like the cartoon version that we saw before, but a lot of people really did not like this direction they're going because they're going away from the toy and into what they're calling comic, but it does look more like a cartoon look. Or except for Rat King. Now, he doesn't look like anything that I've seen before, but a lot of people were really upset about that, so they've put him on the back burner, and they're putting someone else in the slot. But with this, I like collecting the Toon. I almost think I want to go for Casey Jones instead of spending $200 on a NECA version. But anyhow, price versus value. If you like the toy look, you're going to pay up. If you like the Toon look, well, you're going to pay up, but pay up a little less. Switching over to some Transformers real quick, and I do want to say that Hasbro's been doing amazing work. Well, Hasbro's been doing amazing work partnering with Takara, who has been designing these figures that are so amazing. And so with that, I think that you're getting a decent value for the mainline stuff, and it's going closer to G1, which I believe is not going to last forever, but it's almost like they're getting close, but not all the way there. And one day will we be all the way there? No, because once they get 100% G1 and it looks perfect, like it walked off the screen, then there's no place else to go, is the way I feel. I feel like they're always going to dangle that carrot. 20 years from now, they'll still be dangling that carrot. So for that, this is a $50 figure, well, unless you get it on the secondary market for $100, but at retail was $50. Now, people collect a masterpiece. They're paying, this figure was $328. So they're paying for that ultimate G1 look. And if you collect Transformers, and that's your main gig, $328, well, I paid $328. Most people had to pay $450, I guess, because I got mine on Amazon or something, but $450 for this. That was a big problem, but now there's so many options. So getting back to these three, how obscure is this toy line? And it's not obscure at all. There's so much competition out there for Masterpiece Transformers, and some legit, some not, whatever. And then, how deep are you into this? Like, is Optimus Prime, you've got to have the best one of all of them, or your perceived best one. And so with that, the value on this, some people thought $450, no big deal. Other people said, I'm not going to touch it. Waited for the KO for $115, and they're perfectly fine. They're perfectly happy. I mean, you give up some stuff on the KO, but it looks almost exactly the same. So anyway, with all of that, there's also other options like Magic Square and all that kind of stuff coming out. And then you get something else in Transformers that pretty much you don't really see with a lot of other toy lines, and that is smaller, scaled down, more expensive figures, $70 for this guy, that look spot on, almost perfect, and they're just much smaller, but they're a higher price point. Cost versus value, price versus value on this, and I think Legends collectors feel like they get a great value because A, they can store so many more figures in a smaller space. B, they get the transformation out of it. C, they get the ultimate G1 look. They don't have to compromise with Hasbro. Even though Hasbro's good and great and getting close, they still dangle that carrot. They're not quite all the way there. And these companies are going right for the G1 looks. And so with that, it's all up to you. But mainline Hasbro gets you sort of close to what you want for the lowest price. You get smaller for the Legends, and then the Masterpiece, they are high end and they're expensive, but there's options to collect that, and I always talk about that in other videos. And lastly, there's Nacelle. Nacelle company came out, started out making some RoboForce figures, and I don't see that those are taking off. And they're in the too obscure, not enough people to support it, I believe. So we're getting into some stuff that they're doing that I'm going to support and that I'm going to be really talking a lot about and I'm excited about, and that's the Sectars and that's the Power Lords. They look fantastic, but getting into this, these are more expensive. They're $40 each for the Sectars. They don't come with the bugs, and so with that, there's some drawbacks already, but I'm still excited for and looking forward to them. Also, I don't know much about pricing and what's going on with the Power Lords, but we've seen the Four Horsemen try this. They got one wave out. They couldn't get wave 2 out. I just want to see stuff like this excel and be supported. But if there's not enough people to back it, then it's not going to survive. And so for that, no matter how high they charge on the price, there's not enough people. They just can't do it. And right now with Masters of the Universe, I really don't have much to say other than buy what Mattel makes before they're done making it, or else you're just on the secondary market fighting that battle. I mean, literally, we're seeing the end of days. I don't know if it's 2 years left on it, but it's not like this. We're going to go, oh yeah, we've got the whole decade of Masters of the Universe stuff. I don't see it lasting much longer than a couple more years. But I see a lot of stuff coming in the next 2 years, so pretty exciting. But with that, price versus value, a lot of the figures don't feel like they're worth $20 in Origins or $23 in Masterverse, but we're paying that price, and then they go on clearance, and then it gets frustrating. Let me know what you guys think about this price versus value. Where do you stand? Do you like the ultra expensive, high-end, best figure you can get for your money? Do you want to get the most bang out of your buck, and you are okay with getting a Hasbro one? Or is Hasbro's $25 price point even too high for you? You don't think those are worth it? I'd like to know all those comments in the comment section below. Like and subscribe, and Tadira Hanger out.